So without further ado, Teresa Bright.
Thank you. I feel like I should say a little something before we start, and that is that I am definitely no scientist or expert on anything. But I, have read a few things, and I've been very interested in consciousness and particularly in healing for a long time. But I'm just a layperson, so I'm just here to throw out some information today. I really want this to be interactive. So if you've got something to add to the conversation, jump right in and, let's talk about it. So what I wanted to do today was just talk about can we heal? So can healing occur, and how does it occur, and do we have any science behind it? And kind of what got me sort of looking at that and questioning that is because Lynn's book sort of starts off with the science that she's found so far, but it's mostly all, in fact, it's all her own work. And so I said, well, there's other stuff out there, what's out there? And so I started digging around a little bit, and I found this great piece by Dean Radin, in case anybody's not familiar with Dean Radin. He is the chief scientist at IONS and puts together just a lot of, research into ions, and Dean put this little piece together on distant healing, and apparently there's like 2,645 articles now in PubMed on distant healing and intention. Almost all of those are basically since the year 2000. Before 1980 there was only 2, so almost all of those are fairly recent. And why is that? Well, it's because for the last 100 years or so, really all scientists are supposed to only, think in terms of it being a very material world. We're just, a bag of bones and a brain with a mind, and, once you die, then we're done, right? And so it's not been very fashionable or very easy to get money to research consciousness and prove that there's something beyond our brain, our mind. And so that makes it really hard. There is some stuff out there, and kind of what I'm coming up with is that there is a lot of research, and a lot of it's come about because there's so many people out there now who have taken some sort of healing course, people who are looking for alternative healing when they get sick, etc. Some of the courses that are out there and available, different modalities, are things like body talk, therapeutic touch, reconnection, Reiki. Now there's 25 different kinds of Reiki, resonance, repatterning, the Bingston healing, matrix energetics, Joe Ray, shamans, quantum healing, the emotions code, Psych-K, vibrational attunement, which I guess uses tuning forks, infinity healing, pranic healing, Eden healing, and last but not least, prayer. And there's more. Is anybody here involved with healing of any kind? Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got a bunch of healers already, so so some of this is definitely not new to you. Anybody want to add to that?
EFT.
What it was? EFT. Oh yeah, emotional freedom technique.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Anything else?
Color healing.
Color healing.
Color,
Okay. Yeah.
vibration of color.
Anything else?
Right frequencies.
Right. Is that Royal Life?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So there's a ton of modalities out there now, and I think Barbara would even agree that acupuncture might fall into this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Barbara's an acupuncturist, so there's a ton out there, and
prescription drugs.
yeah.
Let's not mention that here.
And full disclosure, I've taken several of these courses. I did Psych-K maybe 10 years ago, and I did the first round of Reiki, and I did the Bingston method, and then in May I went down and did the reconnected healing with Eric Pearl. So, it's just really got me thinking what's out there in terms of the science to back this sort of thing up. And And before we start, I did want to show this really brief video. How do you make, this is Bill Bingston.
It would be, I hope you never become believers. I think belief is dangerous. I'm frankly afraid of believers. Skepticism, I think, is the healthiest place to be. By a believer, what I mean is someone who's certain. And certainty scares the hell out of me. In certainty, there's no room for error. There's no room for doubt. There's no room for correction. There's no room for growth. People who are certain, regardless of what they're certain about, scare me. And so I've met people who are certain that there's no such thing as healing. And I say, would you like to look at evidence? And they go, no, I don't need to. I've spoken to skeptic societies, and I've presented my data, and they don't know what to do. Because I never ask someone to believe, I ask them to see. I ask them to take a look at the data. I ask them and offer them to generate counter-hypotheses to what I've concluded. I ask them to find flaws in what I've done, or my methodology, or my techniques, or anything else. I'm open to being wrong. I'm wrong most of the time. On the flip side, I've met people who are so certain of their truth, of whatever it is that they have, and sometimes it's truth about healing, they scare me equally. And I ask them if they have any evidence, and they don't need it. And I ask them if they've ever doubted, and they have no need to doubt, they have truth. And I've said, have you taken a look at these data? And they say, I don't need to. They scare me equally. And so I would say believers in the truth of healing scare me. Believers in the falsehood of healing scare me. The proper position, I think, my recommended position would be open-minded skepticism.
Well, this shut down by itself. So back to what science is available. Bill's been pretty, he's been pretty interested in that. He does like to teach healing. He's a fantastic healer himself, but really research is his passion. And so we're going to get into some of what he's done, as well as what Lynn's done, as well as what other people have done. So one of the things I want to sort of address when we talk about energy healing is that Bill and Eric Pearl and some other people, they don't want this to be called energy healing. They definitely say it's more like information. It's informational healing. The reconnective healer people, they'll say, you know, it's light, energy, and information. Bingston says, no, it's all information. Lynn doesn't really get into it. But they sort of seem to agree that when it comes to these modalities, it's not like you're bending a spoon. We're not with the, you know, our mind control somehow rearranging molecules so that, you know, like a spoon would bend or something. This is about opening up a channel from us to another person to sort of connect with the universe so that that person can take what it needs, information that it needs, and put it to its greatest use. And a lot of these teachers will teach that the body is going to prioritize. So, you know, you might think that you're, you know, doing some hands-off healing for cancer or something, but if there's a higher priority, then that's what the body's going to work on first. I did find a quote here from a physicist. His name is, well, I can't pronounce it, Vlatko Vedral, and he wrote a book called Decoding Reality. And he wrote, information, and not matter or energy or love, is the building block on which everything is constructed. Information is far more fundamental than matter or energy. Information can also be used to explain the origin and behavior of microscopic interactions such as energy and matter. So that's where you're seeing that a lot of these physicists are going. Another physicist by the name of Charles Seif, he had a book in 2007 called Decoding the Universe, and he wrote, information appears quite literally to shape our universe. Now, I kind of felt like that was sort of important to get that out there, that, you know, this isn't spoon bending. Anybody have anything to add on that? Okay. So what we're going to do is get into some of the work that's been done, and And then what we'll do is we'll get into the Lynn's book and talk about where her research has led her kind of along the way, what makes her healing technique a little bit unique from the ones I've seen in the past. How is it more accessible to those of us who don't have some sort of natural superpower? Because I think we can all agree that there are people out there who are really sort of natural at all of this. And they do seem to be like better able to effect healing or stronger at it or something like that than some of us who, you know, kind of have to be led along and taught what to do and that kind of thing. So why I liked Lynn's book is how can healing happen, and what is the kind of the easiest, fastest, and best way to make that happen. And with her, it comes down to, which may be even more important, is what's in it for those of us who are doing the healing. So let's go with some of the research that's been done. I can tell you that, like with reconnective healing, those Eric Pearl has put together some different science where they've measured heart rate variability on advanced reconnective healers, and definitely showing, you know, an effect there. They've measured the energy field in a room when people enter the energy field, including Eric Pearl, and the energy field seems to go up significantly.
I was present when they brought in the scientists from Stanford
Oh.
for one of the reconnective
Yeah.
courses many years ago. And they ended up writing a whole book on all that they found. But it was absolutely unmistakable, the difference. Yeah. And yeah, I got all those certifications too. But Eric Pearl's really remarkable.
Yeah.
And they totally measured the energy in the room. You could feel it.
Mhm.
And they could measure it. So yeah, and that was several years ago.
I believe that the person who was involved with that was Gary Schwartz, who's pretty highly regarded in
Very
this
highly,
area of research, right?
Well, and a bunch of the Stanford scientists were there. I mean,
Okay.
they had like a whole bank of
Yeah.
equipment to measure it all. It was done in Sacramento, California.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've also done some work where they've got a special camera and they take a photo of somebody prior to getting reconnective healing, and then they take it afterwards, and their whole energy field is quite expanded, and it seems pretty obvious that something happened. But they did some research in Russia with some athletes. They took some blood, they took their blood pressure, blah, blah, they did all these things, and they had a control group, and did some healing on these athletes who were already healthy, but still their measures were very, they were changed quite significantly to the better. So there's definitely some research that has happened with reconnective healing. I will say that having taken the training for reconnection, one difference was that with a lot of the methods, they want you to set an intention, and that doesn't seem to be part of his practice at all, which I find interesting. And we'll talk about that when we get to the end. Maybe we'll get a little bit of conversation about that. But I found that to be very interesting, because to me that seems like, you know, for me it just seemed like you should have set an intention before you start. But Barb's going to address that. Go ahead.
Well, I think Eric is like, for us to set an intention is kind of arrogant, because the universe knows
Right.
what needs to be done. And
We're
so,
limiting ourselves.
yeah, I mean, do you think you know more than the universe? Okay, you know, you can certainly try it, but you don't need to, because it, like you said, it prioritizes, the energy kind of prioritizes, so it's gonna go. So,
Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
Can you tell me what connective healing is? I'm not familiar.
Reconnected?
Yeah, reconnective healing.
Well, we have two trainers here, or master.
Just to describe what it is. I'm not
It's another
familiar.
type of, I actually think are you familiar with Reiki?
Mhm.
I think of it as Reiki on steroids.
Okay.
It's similar to Reiki, but it's a little bit more, it seems like it has a little bit more of an effect.
Okay.
Eric he was a chiropractor in the LA area, very, very well known and very successful, and he just started having some bizarre experiences he didn't understand. And, you know, people were coming to him and telling him what was happening, but he's quite a skeptic. And he's a very educated man, and he went, yeah, I'm not so woo-woo, I don't get it, you know. And after some time and a bunch of playing with it and a whole bunch of unbelievable healings, truly unbelievable healings, he went, maybe I better figure this out. And he just, I mean, and he went through this whole process of, as a doctor, you know, trying to understand, and then he was led to teach. And it is a very remarkable, I mean, you can be somebody who has no knowledge about the body and learn RH and come away healing people hundreds, thousands of miles away. It's very remarkable.
Do you know what the name of his book is?
Heal others, heal yourselves.
Say it again.
Heal others, heal yourself.
Heal
I
Others.
have it, I'll be happy to
Okay.
loan it to you.
I've got several.
We should talk afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great training. I did like it and had an opportunity to use it when I was in Peru in June on a couple of occasions, and it sort of seemed to work, so that was kind of fun. So back to the various kinds of science. So there's, according to Dean, he kind of talks about the science in two different ways. He's got distant healing intention, and then he also talks about it just being just changing things. So in other words, there's just a ton of science where people have used intention to grow, you know, from seeds, this or that, or those kind of things. So there's kind of like two different things, and there seems to be a lot more actual research into that kind of thing than there is in like any kind of healing with humans. And then there's some animal healing, which we'll talk about with Basin. Therapeutic Touch has done some different studies, and they've shown that, and Reiki has too, I believe, where they've shown that they can do the healing and reduce post-operative pain after teeth extraction, various things like that. Dean Radin did a very interesting study using what he calls voodoo dolls. So he basically took clay and sort of shaped them into a little bit of a human shape. And then, you know, put it on a tray and added somebody's hair and fingernail clippings and their favorite piece of jewelry and a couple things like that. And so you had this person who then was in a shielded room, and then a person who's working with this piece of clay, and they sent intention to the person in the room, and then they measured through fMRI and EKGs like that, the person in the other room. So they measured that their fingertip conductivity had changed and heart rate had changed and this kind of thing. It was actually very interesting to me that he's sort of using a voodoo doll. And, you know, he doesn't want to, it's kind of an effigy, I guess you could say. But so then what they did is they had the person with the effigy actually touch the effigy and like give it a massage and remeasured these people, and everything changed. And again, their heart rate variability, their fingertip, you know, response, everything changed amazingly. So there was a huge response for these people that are in a completely shielded room by using an effigy. Another really odd experiment by Dean Radin is where they sort of proved a retroactive causality. So they set up an experiment with meditators, and they kind of went back into the records of a hospital of people who had bloodstream infections years ago. And what they did is they sent intention to these people who had been in the hospital for these infections. They sent intention to them, and then they had a control group who also had infections that they weren't sending intention to, and then they did all this, you know.
They did it without knowing that this is a past. They did the intention as though the people were in the present, right?
No.
I think they knew that they were working on it.
Oh, okay, this then is another
Yeah,
step.
and actually I think they were using prayer. But what they got to was that the people that had been prayed for had statistically shorter hospital stays than the control group. So this went back into the future and back into the past and affected people who were in the hospital.
Well, that just proved, well, not doesn't really prove anything. It is supported by the idea that time is not linear. and is
Exactly.
Irrelevant, and spooky action and just.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so on to Bingston. Bill Bingston is a professor of sociology at St. Joseph's College, PhD. I won't go into his whole history, but he kind of learned healing through this somewhat of an odd guy, I guess you could say, who had a natural talent. And Bill Bingston picked it up and he got interested in it. And because of his connections in the university world, he was able to set up experiments with mice. Now, as far as I know, there's nobody else who's got any kind of studies done using mammals, and they're healing them. So this to me is like the biggest deal, right? This proves that it can happen on mammals. So what he did is he set up experiments where he would order these mice that are bred for this purpose, I guess, and inject them with a mammary cancer. And then he taught students at these universities who did not have any knowledge of hands-off healing, energy healing, whatever you want to call it, they didn't have any knowledge of it, and they didn't even believe in it. But he taught them how to do it, injected these mice who would normally die within 30 days, and he taught these students to sit there for an hour with their hands on either side of the cage and do what he calls image cycling, which we can talk about in a second. But anyway, the bottom line is that these mice, over the course of 30 days, they actually got a big ulcer on their side and they looked like they were going to die. But they all remitted. And he's been able to replicate this 10 times over in university settings. Now it's been over 1,000 mice that have all remitted. I think there was one that didn't. So they all went through this process that looked rather ugly, and you might have thought they were going to die, but they didn't. Now there were some problems with the experiments. One of the problems was that he had a control group of mice in another room. First few experiments, all of the control mice remitted as well, which is not supposed to happen. And so Bill's like, what the heck is going on? So basically he thinks that this comes down to sort of entrainment. In other words, these mice all came from the same source. They may have been bred in the same room, in the same box, who knows? They come together in the same box and then they split them up. And he sort of feels like these mice, were entrained and that's why they were healed. So then I think the next experiment, he's trying to take control mice and put them in one location and do the next experiment in the University of Arizona or something like that, have them separated by miles and, he's done all kinds of things like that. But the point is that over 1,000 mice that he's injected, they've all remitted but one. Then the other interesting thing about his experiments is he then went on to re-inject these mice with that same mammary cancer and try to give it to them again. It didn't happen. They couldn't give it to them again. Once they had been treated like that and remitted, you could not give them cancer again. And that's a big deal. Yeah, I don't know the explanation. Anybody else want to offer up an explanation?
I just think I can't help but think all the time, you probably could heal, I know we can heal each other without even having to sit there and do that, around the cage.
Mm-hmm.
You could just have people going by and thinking wonderful, loving thoughts about these little mice. That'd probably be as powerful. Which makes me realize, as you're driving, any one of us is driving down the street or walking down the street, and we start thinking nasty thoughts about other people, how powerful that really is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And that we're hurting ourselves and other people. And I think what you're talking about is pretty profound.
Yes. Yeah. Another word for having the control mice all remit is resonant bonding, he calls it.
And Teresa, one thing that's
super interesting about these mice is the mice that he purchased for this test and the mammary cancer that he purchased are two standard things that they do on almost all breast cancer studies. So there's a well-known, long history of how these animals die. And it blew that completely out of the water.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah,
So just-
to me, that's amazing research, and to me, this is, there's nothing else out there, as far as I know of, where they're actually healing a mammal of something that would otherwise kill them. So to me, this is like the gold standard of treatments.
Did anyone else replicate this?
Not that I know of. In fact, I think somebody who's done as much work as, say, Eric Pearl has, and with as big a budget as he might have, and maybe even Lynn, let's get these people, if you're listening, let's get these people to replicate this, so that we can prove that it kind of doesn't take the Bingston method, maybe, In other words, like you're saying, anybody can do it. I would love to see these people get some more, spend the money, get some more experiments and studies like this going. I'll tell you about another experiment that Bill Bingston did. So he has one of the reasons why he's able to kind of accomplish this is because he does have a lot of connections in the university system, but he has found that once you do that, the staff and the faculty who allowed him to do it, they almost never wanted to do it again in their university. You kind of have to keep going to different places.
And why is that?
I
What's
don't know.
happening?
So one of his other experiments with an fMRI machine was this. He had a veterinarian go find, I think it was 10 or 20 different hair samples from animals that had a cancer. And this veterinarian put them in envelopes, right? And then he had a bunch of blank envelopes. So Bill's in an fMRI machine, and he's basically got his little hand out just a little bit. And what they did is they would put in his hand all these envelopes, which he can't see, so it's blinded, literally. And anyway, so they put him in his hand, and then they measured his brain waves. And so they were looking to see, what would happen, and basically, without exception, when he would touch an empty envelope, nothing happened. But then when he would have one of the envelopes put in his hand with a sick animal, his brain would light up. Without exception, his brain knew which envelopes had a sick animal's hair in it. So he's written a paper about that, and he talks about it quite a bit. You can find, I was going to play one of the YouTube videos where he talks about this particular experiment. But what's interesting about it that he doesn't like to talk about is that, this is all set up to be a study, and it's, something you can write about. He didn't plan for something to happen, and that is that all of these animals that he had in his hand, they all remitted of their cancers. Do you remember us talking about that at the training? Yeah. I had heard him say that on one of the YouTube videos, but since that part of it wasn't part of his actual study, he doesn't like to talk about it a lot. But he did admit to it, which I found fairly interesting. So the way that he does his training is that he teaches people how to do this image cycling thing. So it's very simple. You make a list of 20 things that you might like to have, and they should be, you're not requesting world peace, you're looking for a new car or a TV or a ring or who knows, whatever it is that you can visualize in your mind that would be just for you, and get a good feeling about it going. And so hopefully you have a list of maybe 20-some items. You memorize it, and then you see them in your mind, and you kind of cycle through these images, right? And you might want to put them on a clock face so you can see them, and you just speed up the cycling, and that changes what's going on in your brain. Is this speed, cycling that's very fast, and then just put it on overdrive. So that's what image cycling is, and I was gonna show a video about that, but we'll let it go. Anyway, I'm just gonna talk about what his findings were about all of his image cycling. One, don't care about what happens. He does recommend setting an intention and then letting it go. So, but his intentions are not as specific as, say, Lynn McTaggart's would be. In other words, if somebody has a sore knee and what they really want to be able to do is ski, you, in your head, then you add into your image cycling as a picture of them skiing. Okay, that's all. Set the picture in your head, but let it go. As reconnection, as Eric Pearl would say, allow. Being detached from the results is a good thing. Bill does not believe that belief is necessary. It's not necessary for whoever's doing the image cycling to feel something. You just cycle. And basically he's saying anybody can do this once they master that image cycling. So, and I'm probably a good example of that because, like, I'm not one of these hyper intuitive people. I don't feel stuff, you know. I'm not one of those people who can put my hands on people and go, oh, you got a heart problem or something like that. I can't do that, but I can learn image cycling. Bill says never to do any kind of healing on people without their permission. He even would say, if you want to do it on an animal, ask the animal before you do it. He's done some work with charged cotton. He actually just put out a study on charging cotton, and that seems to work as well as actually image cycling on a person. Teddy bear surrogates would work as well, or back to the voodoo, I guess. He will maintain that treating a young person with an aggressive cancer is way easier than treating somebody who's had some sort of an older person, maybe with a long-standing condition and or a lot of conditions. He would also say that if somebody needs a healing and if you have the ability to teach them how to image cycle, even just the basics of it, having them image cycling while you're doing the image cycling will boost it and help out. He handed out a great little manual at the end of the class. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. I loved it. It was a business card. And the business card says, on one side, no ritual. And on the other side, it says, be playful.
It says,
What?
No ritual. And on the other side, it says, be playful. So that was fun. But, you know, it's just fun to have somebody who's just not all hung up on details. You know, just learn the image cycling and the rest will sort of take care of itself. Okay. So Bill does have some projects going, and so he's doing some work with EEG harmonics between healer and subject. He's doing some placebo studies. He's doing some studies in vitro on healing of cell cultures. And I guess one of the things he's really getting interested in is trying to figure out how to take this ability to sort of like inoculate other animals or humans using the blood or something like that from one of these animals that have remitted. In other words, it's kind of like taking one of these mice and using their blood to vaccinate other mice.
But not actually injecting them with the blood, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that, I wasn't sure what you were saying.
I think I think that his, where he goes first is maybe, yeah,
Some kind
like
of
a vaccine.
thing.
But anyways, that's one of his, he's got, I guess, just quite a number of different experiments going at any given time. Like I said, his, this sort of thing really, turns him on more than anything is the research. And I like it that, he, wants to do something for humanities. I think this is a great goal, is to maybe somehow figure out how to inoculate people from these sort of things. Yeah, and a couple more things on Bill's finding. One, he does state that negative emotions could interfere with a healer's ability, so you want to, take stock of where you're at on these things. He also says that cancer remission happens intermittently, in bursts, alternating with plateaus. Which I find interesting. I mean, don't just expect that you can go and somehow, boom. Try to stick with it for a little while because the body needs time to work things through, maybe, huh? Yeah, back to the Schumann's resonance. Schumann's resonance is an electromagnetic wave that continually circles the planet. And so his brain harmonizes with those brain waves, but they've also found that his patients, I'm not sure if I can use that word, also their brains will go into that sort of Schumann's resonance. So moving on to Lynn McTaggart and
Teresa, let me just mention one more thing that actually might be a good segue, because when you said that Bill would ask his clients or patients to learn how to do the cycling also because it would kind of potentiate their treatment. And that's kind of what Lynn and Lynn's whole thing seems to be all about.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting more than one person in tune with doing that healing session.
Yeah, like quantum.
Yeah.
So Lynn started with experiments with growing things from seeds, and which were effective and it worked out just fine. I mean, she found that some of these things, the control group might have only have grown 48 millimeters, where the other group grew 56 millimeters. But one of the issues in this is that they all grew more than they would have otherwise have grown. So in other words, she was experiencing this resonant bonding or entanglement with the seeds, which I found very interesting. She says basically when particles are entangled, the actions of one will always influence the other, no matter how far they are separated. And once they've connected, the measurement of one subatomic particle instantaneously affects the position of the second one. So we talked about the problems that Bill had with that. She did some intending on leaves and did the experiment with the biophoton imaging system and took photographs of them and showed after they had intended on them, and yeah, they lit up like a light basically compared to the control group. So then she moved on to like peace and tension experiments, and she did one intending for peace in Sri Lanka, which apparently went extremely well. But it was a situation where they thought, oh, wait, it seems like it's getting worse, but then over the next month it got way better than it had been previous to that. Then on September 2011, they did a big peace experiment that they directed at Afghanistan. And this time they were able to document that there were less casualties during that month that they did their peace experiment. And they didn't just do one session of healing. They did, I think, a couple of weeks of everyday type of healing. So, but then what she found out doing that was that the people that were the intenders, they were having all kinds of very powerful mystic or emotional effects. So this is kind of what's leading her, into different conclusions that she's come to. So she's getting back all of this reporting from her participants of what was happening in their lives that was actually more interesting than what was going on in Afghanistan. The people who were intending for peace were having peace in their own lives. Maybe a relationship got repaired or something along that line. Now, Lynn's been able to do a bunch of her experiments using random number generators. Does anybody here know what those are? Heads, tails, 50-50, real fast. And so what they were able to prove in the Paralab at Princeton is who designed these REGs, or the random number generators, and has set them up around the world. And anyway, what they found out is that through human consciousness, when there's a big emotional event, either good or bad, these random number generators will go non-random. And they can measure that and see how much. So the types of things where they have a lot of evidence for that is 9/11, big earthquakes, tsunamis,
When
the death of
Princess
Princess
died,
Diana, these kinds of things.
I think a better explanation than going non-random is they actually sync up. So I forget, there's 250 or more generators spread around the world.
Mhm.
And when these events occur, according to the report that the study put out, the generators then actually sync up, which is a little bit more important than just being non-random.
Mhm.
It's actually that they start
Connecting.
connecting and
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they found that it starts just
Before.
before the event
right.
and lasts for a few days.
Oh yeah, on 9/11, the random number generators synced or went non-random, however you want to say it, starting 4 hours before the first plane crashed into a building.
Sort of like how animals do this same kind of thing. We actually do it, we just don't know we do it.
Yeah.
We don't pay attention.
Right.
So, and you can have random number generators at an event like a World Series game where somebody wins or whatever, you know, and maybe it's just a local one. One great example of IONS participating with the RNG was at Burning Man a couple of years ago. So they set up these RNGs at Burning Man, and they're monitoring it through, you know, the 2 weeks before, and they're sort of thinking that what'll happen is at the end of Burning Man, when they burn down the Burning Man thing, structure, when they finally burn it down on the last day, they're thinking, oh, it's gonna go non-random. What they found is it didn't happen that way. But another hour later, they set fire to the temple at Burning Man. The temple is where people go to pray. The temple is where people would go and take photos of loved ones. In other words, they were putting a lot of emotion into this building. When they burned down the temple, which they do every year, right after they burned down the man, that's when their random number generator went off the charts, non-random. Which I thought was really interesting. And that's an experiment by IONS. Well, anyway, Lynn has these set up, and she's doing some work with RNGs, and she's able to determine that when people are together and doing intending, that they can set these random number generators to either go non-random or sync up. Basically where we're going with this is that Lynn's finding that, one, people doing these things in a group, they're connecting up. And two, these people are having what they call either a rebound or a mirror effect on the participants, the people who are doing the intending. In other words, if they prayed for peace, the people who are intending found more peace in their lives. If they're praying for healing, they might get a healing. So she's saying basically focusing on healing for other people will bring you healing. And so she was questioning why were the healers getting such a positive effect, and she's saying it may well have been that within the confines of intention groups, it finally becomes safe to give, and giving might ultimately be the entire point of the exercise, the aspect of the intention that proves to be the greatest thing for the healer. So this is what I found kind of unique about Lynn's work. I don't know of anybody else who is kind of doing that kind of an aspect of it, right? When you go to one of these seminars, you're not hearing about how your own life is getting better. You're just being taught how to work on other people. Does anybody else have something to add on that?
You said the name of the book just a minute ago,
Heal others, heal yourself, yeah.
Whose book was that?
That's Eric Pearl's. And
Okay.
actually, one of the things that they do talk about with reconnective healing is when you're doing a healing, you are receiving.
Okay.
I mean, I think even with Reiki, any Reiki practitioner, when you do a Reiki session, you feel some of that. More so, I think, with reconnective healing. I've done reconnective healing sessions like having a sore back. And then after the session, my back will feel better.
Yeah.
But I think you're talking about a group kind of potentiating.
Yeah, and she does recommend that, once you've learned her method of powering up, she calls it, which I don't think is that much different than what Bingston does, to do it in a group and do it at the same time. So in other words, if you've set somebody to heal on in whatever city, it works better if we're all doing it at the same time and also in a group. But she doesn't make the recommendation it has to be a big group. It can be a small group. A group of 8 is a great size of a group in her opinion, which is probably why she calls it power bait. So what she's learned is that there's this thing called entanglement where everything in the room got affected. The size of the group intending matters less than the experience level of the group. She highly recommends setting a very specific intention versus a vague intention or no intention. Does anybody want to have any comments on that? Okay. Definitely she's proven that distance from the target doesn't matter. Bill would say that too. I think Eric would even say that. She says that a photographic representation over the internet worked just as well as being with a person. And I think she even recommends being able to see something, which we'll talk about in a second when we do our first intensive experiment. Some of her intenders had mystical experiences or felt like hyper-connected to everybody, that feeling of oneness. One person said, my brain is wired to a bigger network. Some people have bodily sensations. They have a sense of connectedness. And people's rebound effects, or that mirror effect, these effects were long-lasting. They didn't just go away the next day. They were still, feeling things 2 weeks later, a month later, etc. So a lot of the people in her big peace experiments made very large changes to their lives, a lot of them, after they were involved with some of her experiences.
Have you ever tried to meditate or pray for somebody's healing or peace or whatever? I mean, you can't be pissed off at and do that at the same time, which is why I think that it works,
Yeah.
Like, I can't sit here and be mad at somebody or be resentful about something and pray for peace.
Yeah.
If every cell in my body is resonating at peace,
Mhm.
I'm going to get a lot of peace. I don't know what's going to happen to them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it
So
makes
that's
perfect
how I
sense.
see it.
It makes perfect sense.
And I find the opposite is true too. When people come to me and they say, I am so angry at blah, 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 I go, okay, well, let's work on you. Not that,
Yeah.
let's clear your
Yeah.
stuff. Because it works the other way too, and then the other person often changes. We are all connected.
Yeah, so she did a chapter on how many studies are out there that show that people who give their time and energy to people that are less fortunate are actually much happier and healthier and live longer than people who are really self-absorbed. So that seems to sort of dovetail with what we're talking about here. People who are pleasure seekers actually have higher rates of inflammation than people who gave themselves to others. So Lynn saying, altruistic acts of my participants have been performed within a giant virtual prayer group, and this appeared to offer some sort of amplification of the healing power. So all of our research was leading towards a heretical thought. Maybe the endpoint of our society, I want something, I get something, that good life scenario is kind of ultimately that it kills you. The I want, I get means I get sick. So actually maybe even the self-help movement isn't even all that healthy. maybe getting what you want in your life starts with your readiness to give to other people. Okay. So yeah, so I think all of this is sort of talking about that resonant bonding, entrainment, sort of like a supercharged hive mind or a supergroup thing. But what I really like about both of them is that you can teach yourself how to do this, okay? You don't need to go travel to some far off place and see somebody who's going to charge you a lot of money for a seminar. You can kind of teach yourself this stuff. That's why one of the reasons, many reasons why I was sort of, happy with this book, The Power of Eight. In fact, I will say, like with the Bigston training, before I went to his seminar, I had bought his CD set, and he taught people how to do it on the CD set. I worked on my dog who had cancer with what I had learned on just the CDs, and her cancer hasn't returned after they did a little lumpectomy where they didn't get all the cells. He said if I'd gotten the margins, it was a lump in a gland near her anus. But if he would have gotten all the margins, he would have made her incontinent. And it's a very aggressive cancer. And he goes, I didn't get it, I'm sorry. And he's telling me, prepare yourself. Anyway, it's never come back. I'm attributing to the fact that I did this Bigston stuff on her. Anyway, so Lynn's method is probably even a little simpler than that. So she talks about how you probably do want to, just, take a few minutes to sort of meditate, take a few deep breaths, etc. But let's go ahead and play this.
Feel the intention experiment and my new
Sound
book,
up?
The Power of Eight.
I don't know how.
I hope you're getting ready for the American Peace Intention Experiment on September 30th, and that you've signed up at AmericanIntentionExperiment.com. But before that, you may want to know a little bit about how to do intention. So let me give you some tips. Particularly how to do intention in a group. And even if you're sitting in front of your computer screen on September 30th, you're still going to be part of a massive group. So when we give you the signal to start, or even if you're practicing in a group of 8, mentally or actually physically hold hands so that you create the connection. Then you're going to be asked to take a few deep inhales and exhales so that you calm and center your mind. But do understand that intention isn't a quiet effect. It's a very, very focused mind state. So when you hold the intention, and our intention is going to be lowering violence in a specific area, be very clear in your mind. Visualize that area as being healed. Or if you're practicing in a group and you're trying to heal someone, imagine them being healthy and well in every way. Imagine with your 5 senses. See it, feel it, hear it, touch it, smell it, taste it. Just imagine them being well with all of those senses. Hold that intention statement as our intention, not my intention, signaling that you're part of a bigger group. And be very, very focused on that person or that situation to be healed. Come back to it from that intention statement every so often. So as you hold that intention statement, bring it down to your heart from your head. This is an experience of the heart, not the head. So bring it down to your heart and then send it out gently, almost like it's a bit of smoke coming from you and going to the target. And just gently, or it's unfurling like a plant. And just imagine it going to the target and affecting the target. But as you do so, just be mindful of that connection all the time. And also, what's happening in you? Are you feeling that palpable sense of oneness? Thousands of people on my earlier intention experiments and in my master classes talk about that. They talk about feeling this unbearable, almost, sense of energy and heat. They talk about tingling up and down their arms. Some of them even cry uncontrollably because they're so overwhelmed by this sense of oneness. So record what's going on with you as you practice for the big day when this is going to be amplified tens of times, thousands of times with all of the other participants. So if you haven't signed up, make sure to sign up. www.americanintentionexperiment.com. Thanks so much. Can't wait for you to join me on the day. Bye.
In September, she put together a big intention piece experiment, but she's also got another one coming up, if you want to get in on one from, start to finish. And if you sign up on her email list, you'll get emails a lot. But every week she sends out an email where you can, on a Sunday morning, get together with other people and somebody's nominated somebody to be healed, or they nominated themselves maybe. So you can heal other people on Sunday mornings with the rest of the world. And then she's got this peace experiment coming up, another one, very soon. But again, go on her website, and all you have to do is Google for her, and she comes right up. And sign up and start getting her emails, and then you'll get all of that.
But this one that she was just talking about was one she did last year. And the intention was to reduce the amount of crime, and a specific type of crime, I think violent crime, in St. Louis, which was
Missouri,
one of the most, if not the most dangerous city in the country. So she set the intention that a specific precinct in this area of St. Louis would see a fall in violent crime within this time period that we did this experiment. And I think every day everyone got together and kind of did this whole thing. And then at the end, indeed, violent crime in that specific precinct, the amount did go down. And it went down a significant amount. And she had been tracking it for a while before the study, and it had, kind of fluctuated a little bit, but after this experiment, it went down significantly. So
Has that been published?
I don't know.
I don't know that it has been either. I do know I was in on a couple of those meditations with her, and she showed a picture of an area right near a big bridge. So she was enhancing, what to focus on with this picture. So I always thought that was fairly helpful, right? So her powering up doesn't seem to be that complicated, right?
Yeah, I saw that video earlier today. I got her book on Thursday, so I've been going through it. And I wanted to see what this powering up was about, and I got this video, and I thought that told us how to do the intention, but it didn't tell about powering up. And then in her book, just the last few pages I read, actually it's on page 240, it tells the how to do the powering up, and it's just the breathing exercise.
Yeah. Was it the? She calls this the hard-bound book.
Oh,
soft-bound book.
It's the soft. The soft.
Okay, so let's find it. Thank you for that.
240 in this book.
She does recommend, if you're going to be doing this on a regular basis, is to have a specific spot in your house that is a very calm and good spot for you to get yourself centered and use it consistently. Focus your mind. Sit in a comfortable position in a chair. You don't have to cross your legs or anything on the floor. Thank God. Make a connection. Be passionate. Tell the universe what you want. There's that setting of an intention. Mentally rehearse. Believe in the process. Time it right. Move aside. In summary, enter your intention space. Power up through meditation. Move into peak focus through mindful awareness of the present. Get onto the same wavelength by focusing on compassion from the heart. That was very specific. and making a meaningful connection. State your intention, make it specific. Mentally rehearse every moment. Visualize in very vivid detail. That includes feeling it as well as seeing it, right? Hear it if you need to. Time it right. Move aside. What else do you get from that, Kayla?
On 241, where it says focus your mind, down at the bottom of that, like the second paragraph up, sit in a comfortable position, and then she goes into the breathing technique. And then how often to do the repeating. I know that that is probably not super important to do, but it gives you some direction in how to do that.
Do you want to read it?
Okay. In a comfortable position in a chair, breathe slowly and rhythmically in through your nose and out through your mouth. Slowly blow out all the air so that your in-breath is the same length as your out-breath. Allow the belly to relax so that it slightly protrudes. Then pull it back slowly as if you're trying to get it to touch your back. This will ensure that you're breathing through your diaphragm. Repeat this every 15 seconds, but ensure that you are not overexerting or straining. Carry on for 3 minutes and then keep observing it. Work up to 5 or 10 minutes. Begin to focus your attention on your breath and slowly take an inventory of your 5 senses. What does this present moment look like, sound like, taste like, feel like, smell like? And practice this repeatedly. So it's just a mindfulness breathing technique that I think this does to our monkey mind the same thing as Bill's cycling. It just gets us offline.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would totally agree. Okay, so we have about 25 minutes. Barb has a specific request. Come on up.
So there was a vigil last night near where they were shot, and there was a lot of people who came out and, just to kind of show support. So maybe if we can do that as our first experiment. And
We may only have time for one. Do we want to gather in a circle and hold hands?
yeah, why don't we just stand up and do it? It might be
Okay,
easier
yeah.
than sitting.
And here's a photo for you to focus on if you need that help.
So where do you want to make our circle?
Thanks everybody for allowing hold hand holding.
Maybe we could do the circle so we don't have stuff in the middle. Can we?
Okay, so let's just get centered and take some deep breaths. We'll set our focus and our attention, what we spoke about. Choose something that feels right for you. Bring your attention to your body, relaxation. We'll start with our awareness in our heart.
No, well, see, no, not like this, because I thought they were gonna go one each way, because I thought, the way it looked earlier is all of them went in one direction.
Feeling our heart open.
No, maybe they.
To the love that's available to us from the universe. Feeling the connection in our fingers, the person who's next to us. Becoming aware of their love. The love, the power of healing that we all possess and can generate out. Feeling the love in the people across from us, around us in the circle. Allow that strong feeling of love that's buoyant and holding our intentions. Sending it to those in need. Noticing any vibrations in your body, any sensations. Notice how big your heart is feeling, how open, how loving. And that even in spite of a sad, horrific event, we can find the joy of coming together and sharing our love. Sharing our healing intention. Allowing the movement of forwardness, moving forward, upward. To hold us and guide us.
I'm getting a little visual of sending white light to Pittsburgh. That'll also help heal hearts that are consumed with hate.
Oh yes, they need it as much, if not more. We can just shower the love, the golden healing energy. And now, as a group, maybe we can slowly begin to bring our intention back to the room. Not sure of the timing, but I feel like
minutes.
We can slowly bring ourselves back. And I thank everybody for participating, for opening, for sharing, for contributing, for supporting, for being.
Thank you, everybody.
Namaste.
Namaste. Anybody want to share anything?
I felt like the sending from the heart was a very interesting feel, as opposed to just like sending from the being, just focusing on right from the heart center.
Interesting how?
It just was a different idea for me, and I felt I could feel it expanding.
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Anybody here not have this sort of experiences before that want to share anything?
I was doing a Ram Dass heart-centered meditation, guided meditation,
Oh, nice.
recently sitting on my couch, had the earbuds in, and a cat jumped up on my lap and put his paw exactly on my heart.
Ah.
And I looked down and was continuing to meditate, and so I stopped. He put his paw down. I started again, paw went up, right on my heart. It was really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah,
Cool, yeah.
that's really nice.
Thank you for including people who are filled with hurt and hate. That to me is super important.
Yes.
Because it's a reflection
Yes.
of all of us. I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but it is.
Yeah.
And we forget sometimes.
You look like you wanted to say something.
Oh, I just felt a lot of darkness and anger coming up. Does that sound, I mean, just,
Releasing?
yeah. Black smoke, and I started coughing, and anger, and all these weird emotions coming up.
Wow.
It's weird. It was really
Nice,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah, I almost didn't want to say anything. It was just really, it was a weird feeling, but I mean, it was good. It was coming up.
Yeah, and do you
Yeah.
feel better now that it did?
Yeah, I do.
There you go.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's hard to, I mean, it's brave of you to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, thanks, everybody. Yeah, I mean, I felt like I could have stayed there all day, but I'm like, okay, I know it's getting close to our end time, so.
Yeah, and I'm sure with, how many people are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Good, we have a great size of a group to do this, and since there were a lot of us who are sort of experienced at this, I feel like it was very powerful.
Oh, yeah, I really felt like there was almost like a web of golden light floating around or something. It's just really, very nice.
Well, alrighty then. We'll, I don't think we have time for another one. We'll probably sort of wrap things up, get some last few comments, and, wrap it up.
Thank you. Thanks for leading that.
Thanks for choosing the
Yeah.
subject today. It's a
Yeah,
really great one.
thank
That's
you.
so
Yeah.
appropriate.
Oh, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, well, thanks, everybody, for supporting that, because I just, yeah. Okay.
Well,
So,
yeah,
next
just
month.
to summarize, you know, yeah, this is what the Power of Intention book was all about. Bringing together a group, amplifying its effect, and then getting the rebound effect. The rebound effect being one of the biggest things that, you know, Lynn talked about in the whole book was the mirror effect, getting
I think it was the
something back
part
to-
that surprised her so much, because as
Yeah.
a person who really reports on what the scientists are doing, there's so much focus on when people intend and then what happens, and they've done all this, and in her work, she was like, and I kept getting reports of what was coming back to the
Right.
people, and it's, I
Yeah.
just think it's something that hasn't been really been covered.
Yeah,
Right.
And
Yeah.
so she was so surprised by it, but it
Yeah.
really makes sense.
yeah,
I mean, we're all connected. If you're gonna
Yeah.
put it out, what's gonna come
Yeah.
back?
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was really cool though, how she was like, this is just, wow.
Yeah. And Oliver's talked about doing some intentional groups, you know, getting together and doing some meditations on a regular basis, so.
Oh, a handout that I have before y'all
Teresa
go.
is really talking about doing a
I
power
was kind
bake
of
group.
talking about that. So one of the things I got from Lynn is how to create your own Power 8 group. So take one, pass it around. Just a little setup there for that. And I've got some things that she had sent to me if anybody wants it, if you're gonna set up a Power.
I'm definitely gonna set up a group.
Yeah, so, and we can talk.
Yeah.
I'll get you my number and stuff, but, yeah, I think that for me, there's a kind of a secondary reason for having a Power 8 group. And that is that it seems like we need to raise the vibration of the planet. And by exposing people to these concepts, maybe they come into the Power 8 because they just need a healing and they don't think too much about it and they're thinking it's prayer. Who knows what they're thinking? But they come into a Power 8 group looking for a healing, but they walk away going, oh, wait a minute, this was so much more. And there's a lot of things I hadn't thought about before. And they take it and they talk about it to other people.
That's it right there.
And they start spreading the
share.
word that this is not a materialistic society. There's consciousness. We're all one. This seems to me to be a really beautiful and easy way to sort of
It's so
spread that
clear that
message.
the beginning of the Aquarian age and the first really big sciences were really connected, folks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the Aquarian age. Everything we do impacts each other.
Yeah.
And that's how it, I mean, it's really cool to be here for that, to see that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what do you think, Joseph?
Well, actually, going back a little bit, what came up for me during this meditation was President Trump. And I put a big, loving light around him. And it'd be so lovely and wonderful if he were projecting love and light to everybody. So that's what was coming up for me.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, why not? Absolutely.
Certainly couldn't hurt.
When we
I was just thinking the same thing.
When we get together with your Power of 8, can we just do one whole session on
And that
just
must have
that?
been where
It's
the
okay
black
with me.
smoke came from.
I didn't say that.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add on that?
But actually, you need to let that out, to let the love in, because you can't put the love in if that is there.
You don't have to put the love in, it's already
But I
there.
don't think it's fair to assume that was coming from her,
No, no, no.
right?
No.
Through her.
No, yeah,
Sure.
just feeling what was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
feeling
what
was
she's out there
there.
pushing
Yeah.
up all the time.
Right.
And that kind of a experience, there's going to be a lot of reaction, and some of it is not about how to heal the hurt, it's about how to be mad at that it happened. So,
Right.
you know, there is some of that, that people are experiencing.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
rather
yeah.
than go, let's go help, they're like,
Right.
who are we gonna, that
Yeah.
there's some reactive people that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you were helping
Yeah.
diffuse that for them.
Yeah.
And I'm an
Right, releasing
empath,
it.
so I,
Yeah,
So
you
you're
do.
gonna feel, what
Yeah,
people feel.
a lot of that, yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, for
Thank you.
coming and for being so patient while I try to get through all this, because I'm not an accomplished speaker, but thank you so much for
Thank
allowing
you.
me to.
I really enjoyed this, thank you.
Thank you.